All right, welcome everyone to my presentation today. Thanks for coming out. I know there's a lot of awesome presentations, and I'm glad you decided to come spend some time with me. Today is one man's trash is another man's home lab, which I should have done a subtext under there that how Shaun learned how to dumpster dive and not get caught. I like how y'all laughed at that. Anyway, a little bit about me. First off, just one disclaimer. All my slides are pretty word heavy. Reason for that is I'm going to distribute these after fact so you can have them. I've got model numbers, prices, stuff I'm using. A little bit loud, sorry. Model numbers, prices, and whatnot, so don't worry about trying to take frantic notes or anything along those lines, because I'll be distributing these. I am a UVU graduate, right here from the Valley. I did what they call their 10-year plan, and that's where you basically go to school for the first bit. Sorry. We good? So it's when you go to school, you see a new class come in, and they go through the program and graduate, and you're still going. And then the next class comes in, and they go through 4 years, and they graduate, and you're still there. And then after 10 years, you get a bachelor's degree, and everyone's like, wow, are you going after your doctorate? Nah, just taking a while. I'm a Wireshark aficionado. I did that for 10 years. Every trace is interesting to me, so if you have an awesome one, come find me and say, hey, I got a cool trace for you, I'd love to see it. I have very strong opinions about VLANs and network segmentations. So just one of my quirks, if you really want to get me talking for the better part of an hour, ask me, should I VLAN my home network? Other hobbies, I'm a mountain bike enthusiast. Here in the Valley, it's great. Making, breaking, tinkering, I think we all do that. PC gaming, of course. A little bit of podcasting, not too much. And I'm not a Cylon, if anyone is asking. Thought I'd get that out right now. So why do I need a home lab? This question is something that I've posted with a lot of my coworkers and a lot of friends over the years, is why do we even need one? And really, IT workers have become the tradesmen of the 21st century. If you think of times of old, you'd have carpenters and plumbers and electricians, still have those now, but back in the day, you'd have to sharpen your tools after work. You couldn't go to a job site with dull tools and expect to sharpen them on the customer's time. And it's gotten more complex. IT systems has gotten bigger and stronger and more connected, and it almost seems like it's hard to keep up with just our 8 to 5, 9 to 5 time learning and keeping up with all these new technologies. Budgets are stretched. A lot of employers are really actually forgoing having a test or sandbox environment. Just had a question, you can raise your hand if you want. How many actually has a true sandbox at work? True, not connected to anything else sandbox. That if you break it, no one cares. So, 8? A few more, okay. That's awesome, I'm glad you have that. Most people don't, from what I learned. So the time of kind of sharpening your skills at home has arrived, and that's what this is all about. And a lot of people say, well, why don't you just go to trainings? Why don't you do online courses, all that? And those are great. Paying for professional hands-on training is a very effective method, but a lot of those are focused on one piece of a technology, one aspect, one thing. And a lot of times they're one and done. We'll go for a week, have a great time, make some new friends, learn new technology. 6 months later, if you haven't touched it again, do you remember it? Not so much. And a lot of trainings, like I said, are focused on short-term memorization, one and done, pass a test, get it going. In contrast, a home lab is your own personal environment where you've built it and rebuilt it and torn it apart and broken it and had the rest of your people in their family yell at you because the internet's down again for the 8th time. Because it was just a patch, it shouldn't have had a problem, but yeah. Here's my favorite John Wayne photo. You can't play in prod. You can. It's a terrible idea, but you can. The path to the unemployment line is paved in changes that shouldn't have had any problems. Everyone I think knows a cowboy in their organization. If you don't, you're likely that person. Again, everyone's laughing, but they're like, oh yeah, I kind of am. As complex and connected as some stuff is, it's getting hard to the point where you can't make changes downstream. I remember I was benchmarking some disk stuff, and all of a sudden prod started to feel it, and I'm like, I'm isolated. There is no way I'm touching it. Well, I was saturating the network link a little bit heavy, and things happen. So I came up with the rules of Homelab. Now, just a fair warning with the rules of Homelab, I break every single one of these on a daily basis. But still, they're good rules, and we should probably follow them, but I don't. You should. I should too. Homelab stays isolated. Do not put your family photos on Homelab. Mine are on Homelab right now, but fine. Prod workloads don't find their way to Homelab. They will. move them off. You should be able to break it, crash it, tear it apart, and no one cares except for yourself. Having your production edge router in your home lab, bad idea. We still do it. And then, like I said, real stuff you care about does not live there. And it's a lot of fun. I love it. I love tearing apart stuff. I love building up labs. I love finding high-value enterprise gear that's been discarded and thrown away and repurposing it. Really, if you don't really find this fun, you're probably in the wrong seat here in the bus. Some awesome HomeLab projects. How many have a Plex server? Yeah, there's my Plex users. Yeah, that's a great first project, one of the first thing almost everyone does. Home automation is getting really awesome in HomeLab, and the reason I mentioned Home Assistant and OpenHab, these are isolated systems. These are systems where you actually make a choice whether connectivity from the outside world comes in or not. A lot of the off-the-shelf Samsung Smart Things looking at you has to be cloud connected, right? And in a world of privacy, which we're all very much a part of, I really want to make sure that we control that. And an OpenHab or an Home Assistant is a great thing. On that same privacy token, private cloud services, run your own cloud, stop using Google Drive or whatever, OneDrive. Containerization, great place to play with containerization if you've never done it before. Microsegmentation, I've actually got an environment right now where I've got two hosts on the same broadcast domain that can't talk to each other, and it's fantastic. SDN, VPN, private external connectivity, if you go to your Starbucks, you go to your public places, you could use a third-party VPN service that claims they don't have logs and claims they don't get hacked. News. But I like to write my own. Zero Tier, awesome project for that. If you ever played with Zero Tier, you should check it out. It's fantastic. Run your own IP camera, NVR system, Blue Iris, Shinobi. There's a few others out there that are super great. Again, avoiding the cloud always-on technologies with that. PBX, if you've ever wanted to put a phone in every room of your house and have an intercom to call everyone, I don't know why, you're weird, but okay, that's cool, we can do that. And then Pi-hole, another awesome thing if you want to do whole home ad blocking. If you want to check that out, great place to put it in the lab. So kind of what makes a good home lab? I've come up with, I like to call the Trinity of Home Lab, and I made this up myself, and I think it's pretty great. You have your upfront cost, you've got your ongoing cost, which is your power, and then you got your performance. And you want to balance all three of those things. You get too heavy on one of them, you're going to have a bad time. And then you have to pass what I like to call the chaff. That's the cohabitant acceptance factor. Yes. Chaffs can vary from super easy, I mean, I live by myself, so anything goes, to you better have it all cleaned up and nice, put in a closet, and then you're doing exhaust fans and all that good stuff. Once you pass that chaff security gate, you're good to go. And we're doing the home lab. So think about your chaffs right now. Buy them flowers or presents or gifts, or build them an awesome gaming rig, and then you can do what you want. Okay, so again, very content heavy, I'm very sorry. Pick a budget and stick to it when we're talking about your upfront cost and buying something. It's so easy to nickel and dime yourself, and I have done it so many times. Be realistic with your expectations. Don't go in thinking you're going to get yourself 44 cores for a nickel. It's not going to happen. Reusing your home gear is a fine place to start. It works, it comes with limitations, and don't think to get a home lab you need to go buy enterprise gear. That's what I do because I like it and I like playing with it, and I'm trying to mirror production as close as I can. But really, you could take your old desktop PC, throw some alternative software on it and start learning, and that's great. It's a good place to start. The one that I've bolded that you really can't tell is bolded says, do not force yourself down an expensive path because you found a good deal on a single item, and I'll get into that in just a moment. These are your main pieces right here on the right side. You got your compute, CPU, RAM. Stick with ECC, I'll get more into that. And out-of-band management is fantastic for Home Lab. For your storage, you got your cache and your capacity tiers. We're going to talk about that. And then switching, I run 10 gig at home for my Home Lab, for my server interconnects, not to all my desktops. It can be done. It can be done for cheap, and there are options to do it. I'll talk about that. Software, VMware is fantastic. Run vSAN. I've ran vSAN at my house. It was painful and expensive, but it worked. Hyper-V, you can do storage spaces direct, pretty good. Have some patience when you're building this. Don't go out and saying, hey, after this presentation, it was so good, thank you, that I went out and bought a whole new home lab. You will spend a lot of money doing that way. This is a marathon and not a sprint. So I'm going to tell you a cautionary tale of forcing yourself down a very expensive path. It was the summer of 2015. Let me set the scene. Summer of 2015, Terminator Genesis had just come out, disappointing fans worldwide. David Letterman was at the end of his show, and I was browsing public surplus, as one does. And public surplus is a great tool. You can find a lot of stuff that cities, governments, schools are getting rid of. It's one of the resources. You can also buy yourself a box of 200 5-port gigabit switches. I don't know why you do that. Parenthetically, kids don't like those as trick-or-treating gifts. I don't get it. I would have loved one, but it's fine. They didn't like it. A lot of them were like, well, what's this? I'm like, it's gigabit, welcome. So I found myself a DL380G5. Who remember those? Does anyone remember how loud those were? Did anyone think about putting one in their house? Yeah, I did. And this was the time I was moving from more of an analytical role to a hands-on practical role, and I thought, I need a real server. I'm going to do this for realsies. So as my knowledge when server hardware came, I knew Xeon equals server. That's about as far as I got. So I said, hey, if this has 2 Xeons, that's got to be better than anything, right? 220-watt TDP Xeons, I might add. They were X5460s, if anyone's curious. Had an HP P400 RAID controller built in with a bloated battery. Didn't know the dangers of that the first time. Had dual power supplies because 2 was better than 1, of course. And 32 gigs of high-performance DDR2 memory. Ooh, we're excited. And it cost me about $200. You'll see that's my sticky note. Can you see the green laser through the back of it? Does that work? Oh, technology. You can see like my initial analysis of my server and my windings. Also notice I'm wearing some kind of like cruise socks with dad's shoes. I don't know what that was going on, but, and lucky for you guys, I take pictures of all my stupid projects so you get to laugh at them. I mean, learn from them. So what a smart person would have done at this point. At this point, they would have said, hey, I have a server. Let's get started. Let's learn some things. This is great. That's what a real smart person would do. What a moron does is he goes and buys its 8 friends. Yeah, that's my basement of my house with 9 DL380G5s because if one's good, 9's got to be better. So I thought, hey, I've got them all. Let's take the parts out. We'll build one super server, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be sweet. So I did it. I took all the SAS drives. I put them in one closure. I racked it up. Notice you can actually still see my sticky note there on top. That's the same box. And I had 8 by 146 gig 10K SAS drives for a whopping 1168 gigs raw, 876 after I got RAID 6. I had done it. I needed more. So logically, the first thing to do is say, hey, those are 2.5-inch drives. SATA can go into a SAS backplane. Well, why don't we just go and buy ourselves a bunch of 2 terabyte laptop drives? That'll work. So I did. I spent $400 and said, hey, just buy a bunch of these. That'll be great. So I got them like a moron. Again, I unwrapped them all real quick, put them in all my sleds, shoved in my server. There are no available physical drives. Oh, the HP P400 can't support a hard drive over 800 gigs. I just filled out a bunch of laptop drives on a server that won't work. Okay. Now, keep in mind, I already opened them all. I already put them in the sleds. They're not going back. So what would an enterprising young man do at this point? You know what he'd do? He would cut his losses and try again. No. I'll buy me a P410 controller. That supports drives that are bigger. So I bought a P410 on eBay. Spent $30 on it. Buy it now. Fantastic. Oh, I didn't know RAID controllers had different connectors for backplanes. That's a thing. SFF8087? What is that? I don't know. Well, I'll just build a fan-out cable. I don't need to use no stinking backplane. I built a fan-out cable. Okay. Well, if I just did a fan-out cable, why am I still using these little laptop drives? And I can just run them outside of the chassis of the server. Well, I don't want to have drives sitting around. I know. I'll buy yet another thing, which is a little external hard drive dock with, put 5 drives in that, have it sitting outside next to the server. It'll be good. That'll work. So I did that, and that's what it looked like. Again, remember, my chaff is low. Yours might not be this low. Now notice, there's one of those drives right there that I bought. Remember that? Yeah. Got to use it. But after all of this hullabaloo and all this work, success. I had a drive. So, again, I've got a working server. I should use it. This will be good. I'll learn things. No. Let's rip apart my perfectly working NAS that I already built and put all the drives in the server. Yes, that's a great idea. So I did that. Yeah, horrible idea. But at the end of the day, I was on a mission. And my mission was to get ESXi running with my drives all ready to go. So I did it. You can see it. There it is running. It's beautiful. I got 10.82 terabytes available in RAID 6. Success. I had done it. $782 later. Remember, this started with a $200 purchase from public surplus. We're just going to forget the other 8 servers I bought happened. Let's just forget that happening because that's not included in that figure. 6 months later, my P410 died. Yeah. So, on that note, what happens when your specialized RAID controller dies? Can you just grab your drives and shove them in a new box? No, you can't. You need another P410. So I had to literally grab my rack of hard drives, run over to a friend of mine who had a P410, rebuild my array, and then export my data back off onto large format external drives, which I had to purchase at Best Buy that night. That was the gift that keeps on giving the whole year. It really was. So, for $1,000 and 7 months of your life, you can have a server for 7 months. So, coming back to the Trinity, there's the upfront cost. Please learn from my mistake. That was a horrible. I actually wanted to subtitle this whole talk of "Don't do what I do, I'm dumb," but I didn't think they'd accept it, so I kept that off. But I'll tell you, that's what it really is. Let's talk about ongoing costs. This is your power. Calculate this as a yearly cost, not as a daily cost. It is super easy to fool yourself thinking, a quarter a day is not too bad. 13 cents a day of power is not too bad. Calculate on the yearly, just as a frame of reference, 500 watts running 24/7 is about $430 a year in Lehigh, because we don't have tiered power. Yes. My rack right now is about a kilowatt. I'm about 1,000 watts for my rack, just in case you're curious. Running warm will keep your house warm in the winter and hot in the summer. Putting it in your main office where you work day to day is a bad idea, unless you want to go for that whole sauna thing in the office, which, more power to you. I think it's awesome. Your increased capacity and replacement is an ongoing cost. Your capacity tier is going to grow exponentially as you start getting more stuff and building more projects. Plan on component failures. If you find a good deal on a component that you're using and you like and it works well, buy 2 of them. Just buy 2 so you don't have to run hat in hand over to your friend's house to get him to build your RAID controller. Buy a kilowatt, that little beauty right there. Take it with you when you go test stuff to buy it, because a lot of stuff we do secondhand. When I go buy a piece of hardware, I'll actually take my kilowatt, plug it in, look at the power, and be like, have a good day. Thank you so much. Here's $10, sorry for your time. Software's a cost in there. You have MSDN. VMUG, we'll talk a little bit about it, but if you've never heard of VMUG Advantage program, it's fantastic. It's $200 a year. You pretty much get everything VMware has for Homelab use. And so that's how I ran vSAN. You can even run VDI, Horizon, good stuff like that. Talking about performance, we're not building prod here. We're not going nuts. So think about your workloads and plan accordingly. If you want to run a bunch of VMs, having a single platter is a bad idea. Trust me from experience. I thought, 10 terabyte, I can fit a bunch of VMs on that thing. Wow, I'm running 2 and it's death. Focus your efforts on RAM capacity, and you're going to hear me say that a lot. RAM, it's wonderful. If you are going to do spinning drives for your capacity tier, go ahead and get some SSDs as a cache to spin it up. So now that that's all out of the way, I'm sold. Let's build it. Let's do it. So, obtaining components ranked by effectiveness. Number 1, end of life, decommission equipment from your employer. If you have a employee PC purchase program, if you have like a garage sale type program that your employer works, participate in that. That's usually the best place you'll find your best deals. The stuff's already been amortized, the tax man took his cut, whatever. 9 times out of 10, they'll sell to you for a really good cost. My work does that, it's fantastic. If you don't have one, talk to those in IT, talk to those who manage that stuff, see if you can get one set up. It's a fantastic way to do it. Please just make sure that it fits the Homelab criteria. Don't run any C7000 at home. I actually know someone who is, and they're nuts, but awesome. And ensure proper data destruction best practices, please. Number 2 is have a guy. And that's pretty much the same as number 1. It's just he's going to take all the good stuff first and give you the leftovers. Still pretty good. I have a few guys that I use like that. You're getting second pickings, but it's usually pretty effective. Sometimes that guy's just better at looking at eBay than you are. That's okay. Number 3, classifieds, Facebook Marketplace, eBay. You do okay there. Facebook Marketplace, I don't find a lot of server stuff. eBay, there's tons and tons and tons and tons. Classifieds, not so much. There's some here in the Valley. And then number 4 is your IT recyclers. This is places like TAMS, if you've heard of them. This is where the companies will send their stuff to be destroyed and resold. You're going to spend a little bit more there, admittedly, but they kind of know what they have going on, so it kind of comes with the territory. Sometimes it comes with warranty. I had a switch fail after I bought from one of these recyclers, and I had them replace it, which was super awesome. So let's start compute. And again, content heavy slide, I'm very sorry, but you'll get these afterwards. Right now, as of 2019, right now, your best bang for your buck processors are right here in this top corner. If you can't see them, they're the 2650 V2s. If you do the L model, you get 10 cores, 20 threads, and very low power usage as far as that goes. You're talking about 75, 80 watt TDP. At idle, they're going to be taking about 15, 20 just for the processor itself, and it goes up from there. All these processors on this list go for about $50 to $80 on eBay. And then they are on the VMware HCL for 6.7, so you're going to stay supported. If you don't care about the HCL so much, that's fine. You can use some older stuff. I like to stay on that list just so I don't have to deal with gremlins inside my lab. They use LGA 2011 motherboards. They can be found for about $180 for a dual socket. Generally, the super micros are the ones that are out there. They're sticking with DDR3 memory, which is a little bit cheaper right now, especially if you're going ECC. I haven't made the jump in the Homelab guides to go to DDR4 yet, just because it's still a little bit pricey. It's coming down, and it's coming down pretty quick, but it's still not quite there. If you don't want to do a true enterprise board, you can do an X79 chipset. That was the kind of the workstation or enthusiast boards. A little bit cheaper alternative, they work fine. Notice right here at the bottom, we'll avoid the AliExpress motherboards. They actually have some X79s on AliExpress. They're about $60. Here's a few problems. They work, they do work, and I've tried one. Here's the problems. 1, all the manuals are in Chinese, like all of them. 2, BIOS updates, not gonna happen. And 3, they're not making that chipset anymore, so it kind of makes me wonder where they're getting them. Are they overruns? Are they old stuff? Are they desoldering recycled parts? I don't know. You're gonna end up spending 6 months waiting for it and then be sad on Christmas morning. So I try to avoid it. They also sell a dual X79 board on there, which I found the other day, which the X79 never came in a dual X79 setup. I don't know what black magic voodoo's happening to make that happen. Just avoid it. Probably for the best. When it comes to like mounting this, if you're doing it yourself, you're building your own server, don't do this. This is a recipe for unpleasantness. So what I did is I had a 3D printer, I still do, and I said, hey, I'll just print some brackets and put these 7200 RPM drives all nice and cozy with no airflow right here. Down here, this is where they're supposed to go, and there's a fan on it, and that works pretty well. But right here, this is where the magic happened. Fun fact, 7200 RPM drives act really weird when they get up to 80 Celsius. Really weird. You're like, I swore I saved that file, and now it's gone. Fantastic. There are affordable server enclosures. If you're going to do something like this, build some fans in, make something work. You also, most desktop power supplies that you'll get into don't have enough SATA power headers for that, so you end up using what I like to call Chinese fire starters, and that's your Molex to SATA splitters or your SATA to SATA splitters. Yes, houses burn down because of this, so be careful. Drive failure rates increase dramatically when drives operate out of their operating temperatures, so that's a fun fact for you. Okay, let's say you want to talk Prebuilt. The Prebuilt server is a great way to go if you don't want to get your hands dirty and do it yourself. The ThinkServer RS140s right here and the TS140s, I don't know how, but have slipped through the cracks. A lot of the lab guys aren't even using them. Enterprises are throwing them away for about $100 to 150 to 200, somewhere in there. They do 35 watts at idle and 50 to 60 under load. They're running the Xeon E3 1200 series, which is the version 3, which is actually fairly recent. You get 4 pretty solid cores, and they support Intel QuickSync. So if you want to do any type of offloading of your encoding for NVR cameras or anything like that, fantastic option. They come up on eBay every now and then, not all the time, but they're a fantastic option. Next is the Supermicro X9 series. These come in literally everything. Most people just white label a lot of Supermicro stuff. The CSE 825, fantastic starting place. If I want to find Supermicro gear on eBay, I just search for Supermicro space E5, and that'll kind of show me all the E5 series that are coming up, and then kind of check your processor compatibility matrix, your Intel Arc, all that stuff to make sure it is what you want. They come with an LSI RAID controller. It's an HBA, but most people call them RAID controllers. and they're about $200. And you can get that $200 shipped to your door today. I actually noticed on the slideshow, those are links. When I hand that out, you can click on it and it'll actually take you to an eBay auction. It's not mine. I'm not making money off this. It's just something I found. Because a lot of these presentations I go to, they'd say, you can get these for $80. And then you go out to eBay and they're all $600. I'm like, are you sure? That's why I put them in there. The next one I have is called the Fat Twin, which, bless Supermicro and their weird naming things, but Fat Twin. It's actually 2 nodes side by side in a single chassis, and both of them are twin E5s. And you can actually slide 2 of them. They have redundant power supply in the backplane, and they've got 3 PCI Express slots in them, so you can use those for a 10 gig card or other stuff. Really cool chassis. If you want to go really nutso, and I applaud you, and please send me pictures, they've got this 4U CSE 846 that's got 24 SAS bays in the front of it. If you want to build a free NAS, that's your ticket right there. That thing would be rad. As far as the Dells go, R720, R620s are great buys right now. I say avoid the R710 if you want to stick on the HCL for VMware. If you don't care about that and you're just going to run whatever Linux, Windows, whatever on it, you're probably fine with the R710. And those are getting super cheap. Those are also white labeled across 20 different labels, so you can find those super cheap and they're pretty fantastic. Be careful with the version 1 or version 2 compatibility in the processors because it can get tricky, and they had kind of a mid-cycle refresh on those, so you have to be careful. They are a little bit more power hungry. They come with their PERC RAID controllers, and they're about $300 to $500 depending on your loadout. So that's kind of like your do-it-yourself, and these are kind of your pre-builts if you want to build your server. Now let's get nutty. Out of warranty WAN optimizers. Now you'd never think, hey, I'm going to build a Riverbed and make an ESXi server out of it. You can, and it's fantastic. Really low power. I'm talking full tilt, the sucker running as hard as it can. 25 watts is all it takes. It's an 8-core Xeon proc. They don't tell you exactly what model it is, but if you go and do some digging, I've narrowed it down to 2 specific models. Like I said, it's a soldered-on solution. It's not meant to ever be changed. Runs ESXi just fine. OpenSense, wicked OpenSense performance. It's got 6 or 8 gigabit ports right across the front. So if you want to do some crazy multi-WANs, other stuff, you can totally do it. You have to turn the network cards from non-pass-through to regular, but it's something easily done. The only thing to be careful with the Riverbed, the CX770, careful with RAM compatibility. They can be a little picky, and they're going to have RAM limitations as well. So as a monster hypervisor, not so much, but if you want to run a bunch of small stuff that doesn't require a bunch of RAM, absolutely do it. The next one is the DFI DT122BE 2nd generation. Excuse me, that's a mouthful. They're $120. You get an AMD RX series 4-core at 2.7 gigahertz base, 3.6 boost, with an integrated Vega graphics chip, so you can do some ATI offloading stuff. They also have a PCI 8X slot in a 16X form factor, so it just has the lanes of an 8X, but physically it's a 16X. And they have 4 SATAs. If you want to build a really cheap multi-node lab setup, those are about $120 a piece, and you can pick up 3 of them, and they'd be a fantastic little home lab. They come and go, and availability is limited. Unfortunately, all the lab guys got turned on to this, and they go nuts for them, so they sell out really quick when they hit eBay, but you can get one. They're fantastic. That's what's running my current production OpenSense, is that guy right there, and it's fantastic. Now, another cheap way to do it, and a lot of folks do this, and this is a great way to do it, is get workstation class machines. You're still getting a Xeon, you're still getting something that's rated for 24/7 operation for business use, but you can find them quite a bit cheaper than the whole servers. In the HP series, you're looking at Z400s, Z600s, Z620s, Z80s, and Z820s. They can be held, they're a gamut of prices from $100 to $300. They make fantastic labs, absolutely fantastic. You're getting those same E5 processors, which was on my list of the ones I liked, but you're spending quite a bit less. You're going to be usually probably single proc, but that's okay. The Dell Precision counterpart to that is the 5600 series. Same processors, just in a Dell flavor if you prefer Dell. The 3600s are cool. You can get those working as well. They are stuck on version 1 of the E5 2600 series, but they work just fine for a home lab. And then Supermicro also makes called the Super Workstation. So it's another totally viable option for you. So that's kind of more of the pre-build. So you got your do-it-yourself, which works. You can get decommissioned servers, or you can do some workstations or some crazy Riverbeds, which are, that link right there is actually active, and he lowered the price down to $175 today. So after this, I may be buying it. Or you might beat me to it. Networking. 1 gig is dead. Long live 10 gig in the home lab. Kind of. As far as network cards go, the Mellanox Connect X, X2, and X3s are fantastic for your home labs. You can get a single port or dual port. They come in a 10 gig SFP plus. They're 20 to 40 depending on your branding. You can get them in an HP branded or Mellanox themselves. The Chelsea OT420, another great option. Those are all dual SFP pluses, 35 to 40, and slap those in one of your PCI Express slots, and you've got 10 gig, which is really awesome, especially if you're going to do any type of hyper-converged. From my testing, even with an Optane up front and a SAT on the back end, I end up maxing about 2.3 gigabits per second on my ports as far as that goes. So a lot of people will say, well, how about InfiniBand? Can you run InfiniBand at home? Absolutely you can. I know some guys that do it. It's just those are 40 gigs. You can, if you hit the pricing right, you can get one for cheap, and it's fantastic, and it works out for you. Just know you're kind of going in a cul-de-sac. You're not going through, there's no exit strategy there. You're running InfiniBand, and you have to uplink it to the rest of your network. So just know that going in, but you can absolutely do it. Power usage, this is just an interesting tidbit that I found out as far as what uses the most power, or least to most. DAC cable is your least, and then you have your transceiver plus fiber, and then the one that surprised me the most is a 10 G-based copper. Actually uses the most power out of all of those, which I found quite surprising. I don't work for fs.com whatsoever. I just like them. If you want to buy optics, DACs, fiber patches, they'll get it to you within a few days, and it's about $10. $10 for a 6-foot DAC cable, and they're super nice. Kind of awkward though, because sometimes they'll call you randomly and ask you if you liked your purchase, which is weird. Because they're like, hey, is that working? Do you have that deployed to your enterprise? And I'm sitting there in my mechanical room going, yeah, it's in prod. Yeah, it's great. Love it. They're super nice. I love it. It's like great customer service, but they're thinking I'm some like big business. I'm just a dude who moved his water softener so he can fit into the rack. Who needs soft water? I need more power. Talking about switching, one thing where I do allow in my own rules to let Homelab and HomeProd kind of mix is my network core, just because I don't like to have to do an uplink and run 2 switches. If you want to run a home switch with 10 gig, here's some options for you. Brocade ICX 6450 series, they come in a 48 port, 1 gig PoE, which is nice, and then 4 10 gig ports. Just please be careful with port licensing. Brocade loves to give you 4 ports, but only 2 of them work until you buy a license. And in a Homelab environment, yeah, that makes it not attractive. So find one that has licensing. The real money, though, in this one right here is your Aruba S2500 and the S3500. These are fantastic. 48 ports, gig, PoE plus, in fact, and then 4 10 gig ports. They're about $125. And you're talking 48 gig ports and 4 10 gigs. And they're not horribly loud as long as you stick with the lower power supplies. They've got a higher version and a lower version. Stick lower unless you're going to run some crazy amount of PoE devices, which, again, I applaud you. You're awesome, but just be careful of that. Aruba's rad because they own them, or Aruba/Ruckus. They actually give away firmware updates for free. There's not behind a paywall, so you can actually go to their site and pull the latest updates for your switch, which is fantastic to have. I love that. If you want to go Cisco land, I get it. WS3750E, you get 48 ports of 1 gig plus 10 gigs. They're XFP instead of SFP. Just keep that in mind. A lot of people see the Aruba and go like, I don't know Aruba's command line. If you've ever done a Cisco, it's 80% of the way there. Their VLANs are a little funky, but I'm happy to explain how those work too for them. They're great. They're absolutely great. That's what I'm running. I was running a Brocade, but it exploded due to a power issue that I had that was caused by myself. Let's talk storage. I love the storage part. And I love the 2000s called and they want their hardware RAID cards back. HBAs and software RAIDs are all the hotness right now. And it's true. I love it. Right size your storage. Before you start going nutty with NVMe and cache and Optane and all that stuff, maximize your RAM first. That will give you much more bang for your buck going forward. If you're going to do spinning platters, I'd say stick to the 5400 RPMs just because you're going to spend a lot less power and heat and other things on that lines. Mind your bus, make sure you balance them if you got multi-proc systems, and become real comfy with cabling types, enclosures, backplanes. Like, you don't want the first time you ever see an SFF 8087 to be like, what is, and can I plug this into my DL380? So just get familiar with that. Talking about SSDs, NVMe is actually getting pretty cheap. And the reason being is data centers are starting to move the Gen 1 drives that they put in out of service. So you're talking the Intel data center drive P3520s. You can get them in a 450 gig or a 1.2 terabyte flavor. And I'm not kidding, that's $111 for 1.2T NVMe. And I literally bought it last week, so that price is actually accurate. If you do a best offer of 111, they'll take it, just FYI. They're fantastic. They're available in U.2, or you can actually do a full PCIe slot, which works fine too. If you want to go the SATA route, the DC S3500s or 3510s are fantastic options. We're talking 80 gigs for $12, 120 gigs for $20. Now you notice that I've got some writing after the capacity and before the price. The TBW, that's your terabytes written. That's your lifespan of your SSD. Just in case anyone doesn't know in the stream, you probably all do that. SSDs have a lifespan. They have a certain number of bytes they can write to them. That's a thing. Most consumer grades, even a nice one, are going to max out at about 200 terabytes written for a 1 terabyte drive. That's about where they are. Planned obsolescence. Gotta love it. Enterprise drives, on the other hand, for a 1.2 is 1480 terabytes written. So if you're in the market for an NVMe drive, consider going enterprise. Now, I already see all of you looking at me going, I don't have a U.2 slot in my PC or in my server, and all the servers you mentioned won't have U.2. Ha-ha! We can do this. They actually sell PCI Express to U.2 converters. That's a StarTech. There's another company that sells them. They're on Amazon. They're on a few other places. That'll run you about $39, and you take your U2, you slide it right in there, you put the screws on the back, and you drop it in a PCI Express slot. And suddenly you have got NVMe goodness. They also sell it in an M.2 to U.2 adapter. It looks like that guy right there. The only trouble with those is you have to pull power off a SATA header off your power supply. They don't power them there. The card itself will power the whole drive, so you just drop it in and you're good to go. But those with the M.2s, you have to put a power header on there. And I will give anyone extra points for dropping enterprise SSDs in their gaming rig. That's what I do. That's sitting right below my graphics card. It works great. Make sure when you buy one of these, there's some that don't have this cutout. There's a heat sink. There's a heat spreader on the back of that drive. You want that so heat can escape the thing, because it's sitting in there, as you can see, upside down, and the heat spreaders are up. Just some of those will not have a cutout, and they can get kind of toasty. Now, as far as like lifetime on them and how good they were written, mine had 93% of its life left when I put it in. When you're buying one, I'd reach out to the seller and say, hey, can you give me an estimate on lifetime? Intel sells a tool that'll actually pull it up and say, hey, you're at 90% life, and here's how much space has been written and all that. Most sellers are pretty cool about it and will say, hey, here's where it's at. You'll be somewhere in this range, and if you're not, we'll sell you a new one, because they're not going to go test them for you, but most sellers are pretty cool about it. If you're buying one secondhand, test it yourself. It's a tiny Intel utility. They give it out for free. Works great. You just don't want to buy an enterprise SSD like on its last legs. That's the only real takeaway there. Talking capacity, if you want to go spinning platters, if you want to go most bang for your buck, most storage, you go to Best Buy. And you're all looking at me really funny right now. Like, Best Buy? You buy the Western Digital Easy Stores. They're a Best Buy exclusive. It's the only place you can get it. But inside of this very attractive black casing is a Western Digital Red, or a white labeled red drive, which, as you know, is the NAS drive that is built for 24/7 operation and is built for NASs. This is still a valid thing. I bought one last month. They're still white, the reds. You stress test them before you shuck them. Learn that the hard way. You go buy this external drive, plug it in your machine, ride across the whole platter, give it a stress test, use a utility, something like that. Make sure it's good, and then you shuck it like an oyster. And you pop the drive out of the enclosure, you put it in your own server, and you're off to the races. As far as warranty work goes, I actually keep one of these, the one that I did the best job on shucking that looks like there's no damage on it. I keep one of these just in my closet in the event a drive fails, because they do have 3-year warranties on them. And I've put one back into the enclosure and shipped it off and gotten a new one just fine. So you can do it. Be careful. Whether that's legal or ethical, I don't know, but it's a hard drive. You're using it. I know I'm going to get hauled off, like the Western Digital Police are going to come and get me after that. Great. Well, enjoy it, folks. This is the last time you'll see this. As far as RAID controllers, HBAs are the hotness. That's where you want to be. Software RAIDs are great. FreeNAS, ZFS. I love ZFS. I had my P410 died, and it made me sad inside. I've had several boxes just flat out die. I've grabbed my drives, ran them over to a new machine, plugged them all in. ZFS found them all and said, yep, there's your drives, we're off to the races. So ZFS is great. These are fantastic options for your HBA. Some motherboard headers will actually have enough SATA headers on there for you and might be supported, which works fine. If it's not, these are your options. All of these, the 9210s, 11s, 9207s, All are on the VMware HCL and your FreeNAS guides, so they're well supported. You'll notice there's an I on the end of some of them, or an E. That basically tells you whether the connector is internal or external. If you get one with an E, you can do something super nutty and awesome and get yourself a Xyratex-based SAS tray. So you can actually go buy yourself just a dumb 6 gig SAS enclosure, has a bunch of bays in it, you slap that in, run one single cable up to your HBA, and you now have an entire shelf of spinning drives for super cheap. Those will run you about $100 for these enclosures, and they come under a few names, Dell Compellents. They're all Xyratex based, SC200s. You can find them out there, and some of the guides and resources I'll give you after this can help you find which ones are great. I know one person doing that right now. He went through a very difficult learning phase because he bought a Dell tray or a Dell EMC, which has different formatting, and it was a nightmare. But there's definitely some good options here. If you want to look at the reliability charts, Backblaze puts these out every quarter, I think, or every semi-annually or something. And honestly, I used to really agonize over these and be like, holy smokes, I have to make sure which drives are the best, avoid the Seagates, get the HDSDs, get the WD Reds. In all honesty, they've gotten all pretty close lately. They're all pretty much within a few percentage points of each other, so I haven't worried too much about it recently. And again, all my drives are coming from Best Buy. Parenthetically, it's almost Black Friday, and you'll see an 8 terabyte drive go to $129 and a 10 terabyte drive go to $149 on Black Friday. So I will see you fine folks at on Black Friday at Best Buy and be like, buying drives, huh? You'll see all the Homelabbers show up because everyone else is going for the Xboxes and the PlayStation, the TVs, and I'm over there gathering these up like Smeagol looking for those precious drives, right? Growling at people who just want to do a backup of their family photos, like, no, need them, mine, more. Okay, let's talk software. On the top, vSAN is rad. There's a reason they charge so much for it. For vMag, you can do it. Thing to know about vSAN, if you're going to run, this is mostly my hyperconverged slide. If you want to run hyperconverged at home, which you can do, and I've done it, your 3-node minimum for vSAN, you have to have 1 cache and 1 capacity minimum per disk group. You get no inline deduplication or compression if you have any spinning media in your disk group. Just something to keep in mind. And with the 3 nodes, you're stuck to RAID 1 type formatting, so your capacity gets cut in half. If you want to do vSAN for realsies, you need to go 4-node or higher, but that gets pricey, I get it. A little bit cheaper option, you can do storage spaces direct from Microsoft, S2D. You need to have the Intel NALM or later processor. That's kind of your i7-920, if you remember that era, and it's compatible Xeon and forward. I'll support that. You need 2 SSDs and 4 hard drives minimum, but you only need 2 nodes. And it actually works pretty well. It's performant. In a Homelab, it's fun to play with. I set it up just for grins because I want to try it out. The last bullet point, if you want to do more traditional instead of hyperconverged ZFS on FreeNAS, then you just iSCSI, NFS, whatever you need to get it out to your compute. Boost your RAM before doing your SSD cache. Can't stress that enough. 32 gigs on a ZFS pool is a good thing. Is a good rule of thumb. It used to be like 1 gig per 1 terabyte, but now it's just 32 gigs is generally enough. I've got 144 gigs in my FreeNAS box for 2 reasons. One, I literally bought a cardboard box of RAM in a Sears parking lot. I don't know where it came from, but I ended up with nearly 1 terabyte of DDR3 ECC memory. So I took everything I wanted, hawked the rest on eBay, funded more of my addiction. That's what I did. So I've got a bunch. I run gels in FreeNAS, so my Plex is running in a gel, which is a fun way to learn about gels and all that good stuff. One thing, don't install FreeNAS on a USB or an SD card. Your performance will be abysmal when you do updates. It'll run fine once the thing's booted, but you're talking like a 30-minute upgrade boot up window, which is just painful, and also panic-inducing. The last thing I'm going to say here is do not do hardware RAID with ZFS, ever. Like, really don't. That's a horrible idea. You need to have your drives go straight into ZFS so you can manage them. Otherwise, you have an abstract upon abstract, and things get really dicey, and you'll have a sad day. Let's talk mounting options. Has anyone heard of the LAC rack? Yeah, 19 inches across, IKEA, you geniuses. So you can rack things between this little LAC cute end table for $12.99. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, they've made the top about that much of it is solid wood, and then they do that hollow fiber board in the middle. So in my excitement to get everything racked up, my first two mounted up great. And the only thing I don't like about them is you have to use wood screws, which is super ghetto, and you can't like move it ever. But anyway, so I put my two switches up on top. I go to put in one of my servers, drilled in, and it goes and fell down. I was like, dang it. So I was actually going to bring a lac and cut it in half and show you that it was hollow, but it would have been kind of awkward, the microphone and whatnot. But yeah, you can do them. If you're only doing like a switch or two on top, you can get away with the lac rack. If your chaff is relatively low, get some 2x2s and just screw some round rails into them. Works great. You can build your own 4-post rack for dirt cheap, and you're off to the races. Other thing folks do, this is something that my good friend Ukiah turned me on to with his portable LAN Party in a box, if you've ever seen that. Musicians, rack mount cases. They put their amps and gear in these little portable cases. Guess what? They're 19 inches across, and you can put whatever you want in them. Careful, sometimes they're not deep enough because a lot of that stuff isn't really built for servers, obviously. So you'll end up hanging out the back. You'll have little flags hanging out the back of your thing. Chaff is going to be hard if you put a musician's case in your front room. Put a lamp on it, maybe. I don't know, I'm sorry, I can't even relate to that because I'm like, I just do whatever crazy stuff I want. Keep in mind, racking is great, and it's a tidy way to do it, and a lot of stuff comes in a rack mount. May not be your best option, really. They can be efficient, but they can come at the sound of a penalty of noise pollution, and I'm going to level with y'all right now. It's not white noise. Server fans aren't white noise. I've heard that argument so many times, like, well, my server's loud, but it's white noise. No, it's annoying, and they're shrill. Don't fool yourself. Tower servers are generally quieter. Put them on the bottom of your bread rack, put some networking on top, keyboard, mouse. You can have yourself a tidy little setup. Velcro, no spaghetti monsters. If you only saw my rack, how horribly spaghetti it was. But that's okay. Do as I say, not as I do. Now, I read somewhere that all presentations have a stat, so 100% of IT professionals should have a home lab. I made it up, and Google said I should have done that. So here's some resources to follow and contribute to. Serve the Home Buyer's Guide forums. You'll find some serious labbers there. Reddit, there's a great subreddit for home labs. You got people who've done all sorts of crazy stuff with that. You can get some benchmarked white papers, hop on YouTube, watch some videos. This bottom one is a QR code for the Discord. It's a Discord group for the Utah Home Lab builders. We just barely started that up. Please feel free to join us, contribute, learn. We've got quite a few guys that have done some pretty crazy stuff in there, so feel free to come on in and ask some questions. And to finish up, I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when your boss greenlights and sponsors, keyword, an ICT lab and you have a spare cubicle. You get that. We have 6 individual nodes. There's Xeon D series, that's the embedded series, 8 cores, 16 threads at 80 watts each, 256 gig DDRM each one, dual 10 gig SFP pluses. They're running Intel Optane 800Ps for their cache tier in an M.2 format. S4600 SSDs, 1 taped on fan. We'll get onto that in a little bit. I've got an Ubiquiti X16G switch. You get 12 ports of SFP plus, 4 ports of 110. I got a Cisco 3750 that was literally sitting under my desk, and a lowly end of warranty Dell. If you can see it sitting right there, that's for when someone breaks their vCenter and they have to recover it. It's hilarious. We call that the Dell of shame. Just as far as the performance, what you'll get out of that, I ran the official VMware HCI performance monitor. I got 76,000 IOPS each side, so a grand total of 152,000 IOPS out of some cheap Supermicro sitting in a cubicle. Pretty darn impressive, I think. And you're talking 30 grand all in. That's for everything in there. We also decided to modify it slightly and do a VDI, if anyone's heard about virtual desktops or done any of that. And I had to put an enterprise, video card in it, and you'll see those are meant to be done with a passive cooling and just pass that through. Since it was passively cooled, I had to put my own fans in it, and I made the cardboard Ductmaster 3000 right there. Founders Edition. And the card gets pretty warm, and you can only run the VDI lab for about an hour, parenthetically. You mentioned, I talked about the taped-on fan. When we bought these, Supermicro didn't have a port or didn't have a part number for an actively cooled device, and so I had to basically figure out my own. I went through several iterations. I 3D printed a little box that went on it, but I melted the PLA, and then my best solution was actually 3M adhesive, and I took a 120 millimeter fan, and I just blew it across this heat spreader with that one exhausting out. It actually works great. I've never had a problem. My boss hated that idea. He said, I just spent $30,000 and you're taping on fans, until I walked out to his BMW and showed that his side panels were held on with the same tape, and I'm like, eh? So it ends up working up great. Like I said, the whole point of Homelab is building it and having fun and learning. You don't have to go nuts. You don't have to have, 150,000 IOPS, but get started, get playing with it, and thank you so much for coming. Do you have any questions for me? I think we have like a few minutes, just real quick. Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna post it on the scheduler dealio that y'all sign up for it. There's a way to like distribute slides to class, and then I'll talk to the SAINTCON folks if there's an alternate that those didn't use that. Yeah. If I was just getting started for the very first time, it depends kind of what your enterprise environment looks like. If you're like a VMware shop, run ESX and start running some little VMs. You can actually do the free version that doesn't have vCenter. You can run that as long as you want. But honestly, I'd do FreeNAS. FreeNAS is awesome. Out of the box, you can consolidate your storage, you can run jails, you can do Plex, you can do Pi-holes, all stuff like that. FreeNAS is a great spot. I like it. Cool. Thank you so much, everyone.